This is episode number 27 of the Silver Track Extra.
Thanks for tuning in to the Silver Track Extra, your source for the best tips, tricks, and how-tos to dominate the security industry, helping you improve your business, win more contracts, and crush your competition. Here are your hosts, Chris Anderson and Johnny Page.
What's up, Silver Track Nation? Johnny Page here, joined with Chris Anderson, and we're here on episode number 27 of the Silver Track Extra. Today we're talking about whether or not you're still using company purchased phones in the field versus having your employees bring their own. And Chris, the bring your own device market, which this is the term that we use, is called bring your own device, is really, really growing because of just the technology landscape and how common it is to have a smartphone, which hasn't always been the case.
No, this is actually terrific because, everybody has one now. When we first started, these phones were $400 or $500, and I know they're still pretty pricey now, but everybody has one, and that was a big concern for people in the very beginning. So now this is really taken away. One of the problems, John, real quick, is just a phone that the company purchased on property that maybe had a dead battery, right? Or they had to buy multiple batteries for other ships. So now that these employees have their own phones, it's a terrific way. Super great.
Yeah, and so today we're going to talk about some of the changes that are happening in the marketplace now that are making this possible. And then we're going to talk about the advantages and disadvantages so that you yourself can start weighing out whether or not this is a good option for your company. Because this is something that, Chris, we address this quite often, especially in the sales process for SilverTrack, as companies start to assess the pricing model that fits them. This is a consideration. We can certainly use less devices if we purchase the company phones, but then of course we have the cost of the devices and the contracts taken on as the company. So first, I want to just give a little bit of an idea of what is going on in the marketplace now. And there's a research project that just finished up that assessed that nearly 40% of the chief information officers across corporate America expect to stop giving their workers corporate-owned device by the year 2016. And that's, Chris, that's only 6 months away from where we are. This research wrapped up towards the end of 2014. It's just startling to think that of corporate America, 40% of those enterprises expect to stop giving corporate-owned devices. You would think it would be the opposite way around, especially as a cost-saving model for a small business to stop giving company-owned devices, but it's actually corporate America that's heading that direction.
Well, it's a competitive market now, right? Before, when we first had phones, you had the data plans that were super expensive, right? You had a carrier that you're already working with as a security company, and now you've got like Cricket. You can go to Walmart and get a phone for $35 at the data plan. And then, like, for an example, SilverTrack with our system, it cuts off their data, so you don't have to worry about somebody forgetting to log out. So we've done a lot of cool things to eliminate those data problems, and data is not is expensive anymore.
Yeah, and so we talk about some of the pros and cons of using the bring your own device. And so first, let's focus in on some of the advantages. The most obvious, of course, is the lower cost to the security operator, right? I remember seeing some of the bills that would come across when I was in the industry for Verizon, and it was just enormous because you're talking about hundreds of devices, lines, data packages, and that is a significant cost, especially for some of these small and mid-sized businesses.
Yeah, my problem was with these carriers, everybody was always coming in, and if you're not familiar with the process, you can get taken advantage of as a company. So you originally, for an example, start with 10 devices, and all of a sudden now you find yourself growing, and you need another 20 or 30, and you've already got contracts set with these original 10, and then having to step up. It's just that game of redoing contracts, and then if you're not doing your homework, you can get taken advantage, right? And it becomes pricey.
Yeah, which leads us to the next advantage is that all of that overhead spent on finding the best plan, renewing the contracts, purchasing a new device, getting the device set up, sending it out to the site, making sure the officer knows how to use the new device because it's a different device than he had before. All of that goes into managing the devices, especially as your company grows. We actually spend a lot of time making sure that they're in the field and they're operational, whereas when it's the bring your own device model, they're bringing the device that they prefer most to work.
Yeah.
Because
And
they're the ones who purchased it.
Yeah, and training is huge. And just, I'll share an example. I had an Apple phone, as you know, John, right? And then I lost it, and I thought, you know what? Maybe I'll go back to Android. Well, I've been on Apple for quite a bit, and Android has developed so quick. These phones change constantly, right? So I got on this Android phone, started playing with it. I got lost. I really did. And I consider myself pretty techie, but there was so much in that phone, I literally had to dump that phone and go back to my Apple because I found out that I really didn't need that. So the fact that these guys are carrying phones that they're already familiar with and they know how to use, a lot of money in training, a lot of problems with, how to use.
Yeah, and there are several studies released that actually show that there's increased employee satisfaction when they get to use their own phone. So your first reaction would be, "Oh no, my officers won't want to bring that. They won't want to bring those. Won't want to bring their own phone to work." When in reality, they actually are still bringing their own phone to work. They're just using yours in addition. Ask any of your officers who actually leaves the phone at home, and I would venture to say you would find less than 5%. So there's actually increased employee satisfaction when they get to bring their own phone because they're not carrying around two devices. They don't have to, shift into Android mode when they're at work and then Apple mode when they're at home. It's just a better user experience when you're staying on one device.
Yep. And the other thing, because this is going to be a topic people are going to ask about. They're going to say, well, these guys are using their own phones, but I don't want them using it on the job site and playing video games on their own phone or calling their girlfriend, right? So you need to obviously take a look at the type of account you're dealing with, whether it's a patrol account, you got a guy in the car, that's a little different. Your commercial account, you have less visibility at night. That's a little bit different, right? But if you get into a account where you got high visibility, it's basically your VIP of accounts. Well, a lot of the times what you want to do, if you want to probably put that in a tablet, right? You want to put a nice case on it with your company logo, so the people that are viewing the guy on the phone really truly know that that's what he's doing. That's his job. He's actually reporting in real time, and it kind of relieves a lot of the problems. People think that the guard's just standing on his phone, because I'm sure of listeners or people that are SilverTrack users have heard that before,
Yeah, absolutely. And then another advantage of the bring your own device is that it offers some productivity gains in terms of that the employees are happier with the device that they're using. They can work faster because they're on this device every day, and it just really there's a lot of upside to doing this. In addition to, they don't break their phones as often. I'm sure that is, that's always a problem. It seems that the phones are always beat up.
Yeah, that's a great point, John. It really is. That's a great point.
Yeah, you don't have to put the Army tank case on this phone that has to be waterproof, float, be shockproof up to 10,000 pounds of pressure, because it seems like the company phones get beat to pieces. The battery life hardly ever lasts. When they're bringing their own phone, they're going to take care of it like it's their own. And then just to address the point you brought up earlier about whether or not they're on their personal phone, I would hesitate to say that just because you give them a company phone means that they're still not going to be on their own. Right, like even if they are touring around the property, when they have a moment of downtime, I don't think that they still hesitate from pulling out the phone and texting their girlfriend or playing Angry Birds, right? We just need to make sure that we have a system in place like SilverTrack that make sure that the right stuff is getting done. But when they're on the property alone, there's very little that you can do to make sure that they don't pull out the personal device. So you might as well save the cost, put the right performance metrics in place to make sure that they're hitting those, have a supervisor top by, but at the end of the day, you've got to pick your battles, and making sure that an employee doesn't carry a personal phone on site is going to be a very difficult and oftentimes a losing battle.
Yeah, and I think we've eliminated that process. I really do. I mean, with the things that we set up with SilverTrack now, with the task notifications and the QR codes and a quick review of the reporting. I mean, it's fabulous. So you'll know within minutes if somebody's abusing that. So it's a good point, John.
Well, SilverTrack Nation, we still have a few more pros and cons that we'll discuss in regards to the bring your own device model for your security company. But before we do that, let's hear from our amazing sponsors over at Paperless Proposal.
Developed for mid to large security companies, Paperless Proposal is the #1 enterprise-level cloud-based proposal creation and management solution. Use it to create, send, track, and manage highly customized proactive or RFP proposals. Differentiate your company and win more business with this powerful proposal generation software that can include office files, video, templates, pricing tools, CRM integration, and e-signature approval. Contact us for a free demo at www.paperlessproposal.com/Silvertrack.
So one of the more common disadvantages to the bring your own device model for corporate America as a whole is the subject of information security. And this is more so applicable for employees that take their work home. So let's say that you're taking company documentation home, you're working on projects at home, and so now you're having to be trusted with the security of that information on your own device, whereas when they give you a company device, they have the necessary firewalls, antivirus, all of those set up on that device. Well, a benefit in the security industry is that our officers rarely ever take work home. They go to the shift, especially if they're using a tool like SilverTrack or another incident reporting tool. They are not going to be taking the information to home. It's all going to be sent directly to the cloud as soon as it's reported, right? So you don't have that data security sensitivity that you would in maybe some other industries.
Yeah, and the phones itself, you guys don't have to worry too much about the data plan, because when the officers, if they're not using the phone during the course of their security duties, the data shuts off and they have to relog in. So we're already saving them on the data plan, John.
Yeah, and then the strategy, if it does become an issue with the officers, there are one of the practices put in place is to just offer a stipend, to say, look, we give a $15 or $20 stipend for per month if you use your own phone, which is way less expensive than signing into your contract, paying for the data plan, adding the additional line. It offers you a lot more flexibility. So you just say, hey, if you worked over 20 hours this week, we'll give you the $20 stipend, right? You're taking all that overhead from making sure the devices are always there, they're charged, all that comes with managing devices, and maybe you're adding it to the payroll process, but it's a lot less expensive, it's a lot more efficient, and like we said, there's a lot of advantages that come with that.
Yeah, I think one right now, I just want to mention, when you got to send somebody to another job site, nobody has to come by the office to pick up the equipment, the phone, right?
Yeah.
You got your own phone, and he's rolling right out.
Yeah. So a couple of the disadvantages, of course, like we mentioned before, sometimes security can be an issue. So I don't think it's as much of an issue shockingly enough, in the security industry because of the nature of the job. They're not taking it home, but it is a consideration to be aware of. And then also just the increase of consumer applications and consumer uses of the phones while they're at work. So this really isn't different than them reading a book when they shouldn't be reading a book versus playing a game on their phone. We need to address those the same way. So whether they have their personal phone or they're using a work phone, again, I don't know that it's too much of a disadvantage. And then there can be some issues. Of course, it's not with SilverTrack, and I don't think it is with a lot of even of our competition out there. But you need to make sure that you work across a lot of platforms, right? I know just off the top of my head, I know that we don't support Windows phones or Blackberries, although those only account for just a small percentage of the phones in the market today. It still is something to consider. So if you have a large user base of Windows phones or Blackberries, you're going to want to make sure that you're using software and using certain reporting tools that will support all of those platforms if it is needed.
Yeah, the only thing I would also do, John, is I would consider maybe purchasing some charging cords to have in storage with your supervisors, because let's face it, some of the guys are going to forget to charge their phones. I mean, I don't think that happens all the time, but it could be a good excuse for not reporting correctly. So supervisors out there, it wouldn't hurt to, if you got guys, a lot of the guys carrying the same phones, carry some charging cords, might help out.
Yeah, or another option, Chris, they have those power banks like it's like a little USB stick, but it's actually powered and it has enough to power iPhone for 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
Instead of having to have the charge, it's just you have all the universal plugs on it. You can get them for $10 to $15. You just charge that. You could have you could have one of those at every post. Make sure that the officer always has those plugged in, and then if their personal phone runs out, they just pop it right on the phone, and you're good to go. So yeah, there's so many different solutions out there. I'm excited to hear what some of the feedback is. From some of the companies, some of our customers and users out there that aren't on the bring your own device model, who I think will really start to consider this as time goes on, because it is becoming more and more accessible as just the digital landscape of America becomes more and more mobile.
Yeah, and I think that people really need to start taking a look at that. That's a great way to cut costs, it really is. It's working out very well for the people that I'm talking to. They're doing it every day.
Absolutely. So if you have more questions about what we've covered today, you can visit our show notes section at silvertracksoftware.com/27. That's where we'll have a much more detailed article on everything that we covered today. Of course, links to some of the studies that we mentioned. And then we would love to hear from you. If you have questions about the bring your own device model and whether it would work for you, we'd love to brainstorm with you and hear some of your comments on that as well. And until next time, my name is Johnny Page.
I'm Chris Anderson.
This was the SilverTrack Extra, and we'll talk to you soon.
This has been another episode of the SilverTrack Extra. For more insider information, visit silvertracksoftware.com/extra. Listen on the go by subscribing in iTunes. Want to hear your questions answered on the show? Visit silvertracksoftware.com/questions to submit your requests.